All right, everybody, welcome to the Bronx Tales presented by House Enterprise. I'm your host, Will Tondo, and today we're joined by a great Yankees Twitter follow, Stanzo, Nick Costanzo. He does a ton of different things with the Bronx Pinstripes and is all over Twitter. If you haven't followed him already, you're missing out on some good content. And no better day to do it on Wandy Peralta's birthday, the best pitcher in New York at the moment. But Stanzo, welcome to the podcast, and how's everything going?
Yeah, everything's good, man. Like we said, besides the beatdown last night, could have done without that. But thanks for having me.
So the trade deadline, obviously, you mentioned it before. The Yankees have such a big lead in the division. Obviously, the gap's kind of closing out. It's not 17 games as it once was. It's now down to 11 and a half. Anything could happen. But in your eyes, the Yankees, obviously top of the table. They're not winning some games against some big teams like the Mets and Astros. What do they need in order to propel themselves past October?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the thing about the Yankees, right? The good thing about the way they started is that they've put themselves in such a good position where, last year they were just trying to tread water. They had to rip off that 13-game winning streak, just give themselves a chance at the playoffs. This year, they have a little bit of breathing room where they're 10-11 in July, and they still have a comfortable division lead. But that being said, I think it's kind of good that they've shown they've still had holes, whereas, maybe if there's still 17 games up on the division, Cashman isn't as inclined to go out and get someone. I think that the clear need, we're talking about how, Domingo Germán's going to get hit around tonight. They got to go get a starting pitcher, right? So they're all in on Luis Castillo, it seems like. They're touching base with the A's on Frankie Montas as well. So Castillo is my guy. I know he's kind of everyone's, like, he's got a 1 ERA over the past month. Obviously, we saw firsthand what he did to us at the stadium. He's been linked to the Yankees for years. So I think it's the kind of move that Brian Cashman would end up making, especially when you look at the fact that it would probably be headlined by Oswald Peraza, whereas I think the Yankees do prefer to keep Volpe out of those two shortstops.
Right on. Yeah, I mean, starting pitching will definitely be one of the top markets, not only for the Yankees, but across the league. And there's not many accessible pitchers per se. I mean, obviously you just mentioned Castillo and Montas, but then you kind of have guys, it's a hard drop afterwards. Whereas in the bullpen, there's a decent amount of options across the league. Obviously with Mike King going down, Chapman's inconsistencies, Jonathan Loáisiga not being where he needs to be like he was last year. I think the Yankees do also go with some bullpen moves. Is there any guys in your eyes that stand out? I mean, obviously there's more apparent options that might be a little bit more cheaper than Luis Castillo, but anybody in particular?
I think that there's, a different, a decent amount of ways they can go here. I know a lot of people want another David Robertson reunion. I just don't think that that's going to happen based off of how he ended kind of last time in New York. There was a little bit of a dispute about playoff shares, and he was the player rep in charge of that. So I don't think that that's going to necessarily happen. It is interesting to see whether the Yankees are going to go the established reliever route, like someone like a Robertson. Lou Trevino is another example. He's not having a good year, but he's a guy that we've seen being established back end reliever before. They went that route when they got Britton in 2018, right? They got a guy who is a legit back end arm. Or do they try and go for another reclamation project like Clay Holmes, Wandy Peralta? These were far from household names. When the Yankees traded for them, if you looked at what their ERAs were, it was like high 4s, low 5s. It's like, what are these guys going to do? But if they have confidence in a certain guy's repertoire and he's got years of control, maybe that's the way they go. So if I had to guess, it's probably going to end up being a reliever that maybe you haven't heard of and they just think that Matt Blake can fix. But who knows? Maybe they do go out and add someone. There's a lot of relievers on the market, so it's going to be interesting to see which way they go.
Right on. Yeah, I mean, there's been names thrown around like Bednar from the Pirates, Gregory Soto. Those are more all-star caliber players that'll cost a little bit more, but I trust Matt Blake to at least point out somebody that he can fix it up. So we've covered the pitching. I mean, let's address the elephant in the room. I'm wearing my get the ball to the Italian shirts because I thought last year's offseason was going to be trade deadline with Rizzo and Gallo was lights out, but Joey Gallo automatic out, batting 160. I think he's batting barely over 100 in his Yankees tenure. An outfielder is obviously should be in play for the Yankees, especially with standing out for a couple, hopefully knock on wood, not too many days, but he is on the IL. Any outfielders that you think the Yankees will, keep tabs on or at least try to acquire?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I know the hot name is Benintendi. I've kind of gone back and forth on him just because he really doesn't have much power at all. But at the same time, a high average, high OBP guy, lefty hitter at the bottom of the lineup might not be the worst thing in the world. Like if we were requiring him to be our 5 hitter, I would not be happy about it, but he's going to probably bat 7th or 8th in our lineup. So, I wouldn't hate him.
2 hours later.
Jack reporting that the Yankees will acquire outfielder Andrew Benintendi from the Kansas City Royals. They, in return, receive 3 minor league pitchers, all single-A, TJ Sikkema, Beckway, and Chandler Champlain. Benintendi expected to join the team over the weekend with the Kansas City Royals coming to town.
I know David Peralta is another name that's getting thrown around from Arizona, kind of a veteran on an expiring deal, lefty bat. Ian Happ too. He's got an extra year of control after this, so he would probably be the most expensive out of the 3 I just mentioned. So I think they'll probably be in all 3 of those guys. I don't know that any of them moves the needle to the point where it's really a huge upgrade to the Yankee lineup. But at the same time, I think it is essential they add someone just because, like you said, we don't know when Stan's going to be back. When he does get back, do you want to keep pushing him in the outfield? Do you want to keep playing Judge in center field consistently? Do you want to play Hicks every day? So I think it's important that they get a bat, even if it's nothing more than just a guy that plays a couple times a week and is a, bat off the bench in the playoffs. I think that, just add depth to the team. Cause like you said, Joey Gallo can't and probably won't be on this team, this time next week. So I think that they should add someone, but it may not be the eye popping name, the same way Rizzo was when they got him last year.
So you just mentioned with Gallo, probably not going to be on the team, come next week. Is there any place that you see him going, any package that you see him being a part of? I have one that's just, it's obviously very fallacy fantasy, but I think Joey Gallo for Blake Snell straight up would just be something where it's like 2 reclamation projects. Let's go figure it out. The Padres could use an extra bat. We could use a pitcher. Let's just call it a deal. But in your eyes, is there anything that where do you see Joey Gallo going?
Yeah, I don't think that that's that far-fetched. If I had to guess, I actually would say Padres too. They were one of the teams that were in on him when we acquired him last year. Apparently, in spring training, they were in on him as well. There's some ties to the front office there. I think that if I had to guess, he would probably go for a lower level prospect. We saw Luke Voigt get traded for Justin Lange back in spring training, and he was, a lower level prospect. So if I had to guess, it's something like that. But the fact that he's even still on the roster, Cashman better get something back for him. And again, I know it won't be anything good, but the fact that he's still playing games, he's taking at bats away from, even an Andujar or a Florio, just shows me that Cashman really thinks he can get something of value back for him.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, I'll hand up. I wanted Joey Gallo. I mean, we already knew that his strikeouts were high, but the potential of those back-to-back 40 home run seasons and great defense in the outfield, it just hasn't played out, obviously. But you mentioned guys like Florio and Andujar. Do they have a future on this team, or is this the week that they're no longer Yankees?
Yeah, my gut is that I don't know about Andujar getting traded. I don't think that he has a ton of, trade value whatsoever. I mean, he's shown he could be at least a competent left fielder, but I think that if he had value, he would have already been gone by now. Florio really intrigues me though, because he's still young. He's got a ton of talent, a lot of tools. The big knock on him, besides staying healthy, is that he strikes out a lot, and he's been able to cut down this a little bit this year. He's really been playing great down in Scranton this year. So I think the fact that he hasn't already been promoted to take at bats away from Gallo, again, shows me I think Cashman is shopping him, because otherwise there would be no reason for, a guy who's been a top prospect. He's got speed. He's a natural center fielder, lefty bat with some pop. The fact he's on this team shows me that Cashman wants to keep him in AAA, keep his value where it's at. And I think that he'll be traded within the week.
Yeah. So there's 2 ways we can go with this conversation right now. We can talk about the prospects and how we rank them in terms of, who's worth what, or we take already these top tier prospects and we send them for Juan Soto. We'll start with the Juan Soto take first, because I'm curious to hear what you have to say. Obviously, the news broke. Everyone and their mother is going to put tabs on him, because it's like, it's Juan Soto. He's 23, World Series champ. He's an all-star. He's under control till 2025. if you're not a good general manager if you're not putting tabs on him. First off, do you think he's traded by next week? And second of all, if the Yankees even entertain this, what do you think that trade would even look like?
So I don't really understand why they're in a rush to trade him, especially if they're looking to sell the team, unless they really are committed to getting this Corbin contract off the books and they really think that'll have that much of an impact on the valuation of the team. That's the only reason I could think of. But from everything I've been seeing, it does seem like, there's a lot of smoke towards him getting moved, that they think he's going to, get moved. So I'm not going to try and go against that and say, oh, no, he won't. So I think he does get traded. It's tough, right? Because obviously, like, I want Juan Soto on my baseball team. Like, if you took Judge, Soto, Stanton, for this playoff run, then, who knows if they keep Judge or not. But regardless, you have 2 more seasons of Juan Soto. Of course, I want that. But do I want to actually send our top 5 prospects, which is what people are saying the cost would be? I don't know that I do, especially because that takes you out of the Castillo sweepstakes or Montas for that matter. And then, you're trusting the pitching staff basically as is, maybe a patch job to the bullpen, going into the playoffs. I don't know. I don't know if I would rather have that than, and then what if Castillo and Matas, one of them ends up with the Astros? It's tough, right? I don't know. What are your thoughts on it? Because I go both ways.
Yeah, I'm conflicted because I also don't think that the Nationals are going to rush unless the deal is exactly what they want by August 2nd. Like, you're telling me by this offseason, he's off the team, 100%. 100%. Yep. Like, if they burnt that bridge and they're going to trade him, it'll happen this offseason. I'm conflicted as well, though, with, the Yankees in this week because, you deplete the farm. You get, obviously, a guy like Juan Soto. I'm past the point of the prospect hugging, but the team needs more than just a Juan Soto to propel to the World Series. You can have, it's starting to remind me of like the Ohtani and Trout tweets of like, Ohtani pitches, 18 strikeouts and Trout hits 4 home runs, but the Angels lose. Us getting Juan Soto would kind of make me feel, oh, Judge, Stanton, and Soto all hit 2 home runs in each game, but Domingo Germán or Monty or, Tyone let up 6 runs. So it's like they lose that game because of that. It's like, unless they can guarantee, hey, we're going to get a Frankie Montas or a Luis Castillo, even someone like a Kyle Hendricks, if just a starter that's like I can trust. Along with that, you make that deal 10 out of 10.
Yep.
But I've also been seeing like you're throwing in a Glaber, you're throwing in a Nestor in that trade. You can't trade those types of guys in this season right now.
No, I totally agree, and that's really my biggest hesitation. Not even so much that it's Glaber specifically, but it's just I don't want to weaken my MLB roster right now. Yeah. Like, what if they ask for Jonathan Loaizaga? What if they ask for, and again, I'm not saying that these guys are like untouchable in a trade. I'm not doing it because of that. But it's like, not only are you depleting your farm, you're also affecting your roster, in the present day. So I think it's tough. And the one case where, yes, I understand that if Aaron Judge walks in free agency, it's nice to fall back on Juan Soto for the next 2 years, but that's not necessarily the only contingency plan, right? You can trade for Castillo, you can keep your farm in place. If Judge goes to San Francisco, Trey Turner is a free agent, Xander Bogaerts is a free agent, Brian Reynolds is a guy the Pirates are listening to offers on. Shohei Ohtani is a free agent in 1 year. So it's just, I don't agree with the premise that, in case Judge leaves, let's deplete our farm system. I think get Castillo now, do everything you can to win the World Series this year, and then, cross the Judge bridge when you get to it in the winter. Maybe he stays, maybe if he leaves, there's other ways you can go. So I just don't want them to panic, because if they can get Soto and they can make it hurt less than we're assuming it will, like, of course, go for it, do it. But I don't know that you roll with just Soto and do nothing to upgrade your starting rotation.
That's the thing. We agree on that 100% because it's like the whole Judge possibly leaving and the addition of Soto that's not yin and yang. It's like, those are two, it's like, worry about one thing at a time. It's like, we have Aaron Judge until the second game, whatever the World Series ends. All right. And that'll be a conversation for a different day because it's like, there's too much media with Judge. There's too much, different questioning. And then if there's going to be one team that pays him $500 million, and I hope it's not the Yankees, to be completely. I joke about the blank check, and we sell T-shirts with the blank check. I'm not paying him $500 million. I mean, it's not my money, but you just 10 years, $500 million is not a sexy offer whatsoever. But so this trade deadline, you mentioned guys like Ohtani and Xander Bogaerts. I mean, not even Yankees related. Do you think they get moved, or is it all smoke?
I think it's tough to say for both of them, right? Like if you look at Ohtani, theoretically the Angels probably should move him. They have the Trout contract on the books. They have the Rendon contract on the books. Signs are pointing towards Ohtani leaving in free agency next year. But at the same time, if you're the Nationals, how do you trade Juan Soto? If you're the Angels, how do you trade Shohei Ohtani? So it's tough, but I think that they probably end up holding on to him just because if the Angels were smart, you get a haul for him now, but I think that they're not a smart organization, so they'll probably just hold on to him. And then the Red Sox with Bogaerts, same thing. Like I fully expect them to sell. I think they'll sell Martinez, they'll sell Vasquez. Maybe if there's a Nathan Eovaldi market, he's an interesting name. But Bogaerts is just kind of, he's really the heart and soul of that team. He's won 2 World Series. He's almost like their pseudo captain at this point. I don't know. I'm sure they are going to prioritize signing Rafael Devers, but I don't know if a deadline trade of Bogaerts is in the cards. It just seems like something that would kind of really be a gut punch to those fans. But who knows? I'm nodding Chaim Bloom's head. Yeah,
I mean, it definitely is a gut punch that they're in last place. No one expected these Orioles. And I do hope for Baltimore fans at this point that they don't sell this offseason. I hope they just do nothing in the trade deadline. Don't sell any pieces. Don't trade a guy like Trey Mancini after the season you're having right now. You're not going to make the playoffs, but he's a heart and soul guy. Do not just keep him place. Let him ride out in the sunset. The guy had cancer 2 years ago. Just keep the team intact. You're not doing anything. There's no need to trade. That's my take on the O's.
Yeah, they're an interesting case, right? I mean, they're in for wild card contention. That, like you said, they have Mancini. They've got a couple relievers. Dylan Tate is one of them that they could get some value for. I could see them selling off some of those pieces, but you're right. Like, don't sell like an Anthony Santander. He's got multiple years of control, switch hitter. Middle of the order bat. So I just hope if I was an Orioles fan, I wouldn't be anti-selling some pieces, but I wouldn't want them to to blow it up and sell guys with multiple years of control.
Exactly. So, I mean, going around the rest of the American League, particularly the East, do you see anybody making a play for guys that the Yankees are interested in? So we've already talked about the Castillos, Montoses, Benintendis, Reynolds. Who would you say is like the biggest competition? Because, for example, last year, I don't think Anthony Rizzo was their number one target, but I'm sure as hell know it was the Red Sox number one target. And again, I love Anthony Rizzo. I think he's a perfect fit. I'm glad he came back in the offseason. But again, I think the Yankees do kind of make moves like that where it's like, well, we can't let so-and-so get him. Do you think there's any teams that stick out to you particularly?
I think the Rays and Jays will both be in on Castillo. Not that they're favored. I saw today, I believe it was the Yankees, the Cardinals, and the Mariners are said to be the most aggressive in the Castillo/Montas sweepstakes. So I'm not saying that they're, front runners for him, but I don't see why those teams wouldn't go after them. The Blue Jays, they obviously have Manoah and Gossman, but why not add another guy? They're going to be in a division series, in a short series. Why not stockpile starting pitching? Hyun-Jin Ryu is out for the year. And then the Rays, they've had issues. Obviously, Tyler Glass now done for the year. Shane Baz is hurt again. So why not add another starter to pair with McClanahan? And, what they would have to go through a short series as well. So I think that, those guys will both be in on starting pitching. And that's really, besides the Yankees needing another pitcher, besides Severino being injured, get Castillo so that one of your rivals doesn't. Because I could totally see him end up in either Toronto, Tampa, or maybe even Houston.
Let's hope not. And to make all of these trades, we have our prospects. Is there anybody on this? I know you mentioned Anthony Volpe, especially with IKF not. I mean, hey, I will shout out IKF on a 13-game hitting streak. That's all fine and dandy, but he is not the shortstop of the future. I hope they, turn to that in the offseason and stop with this, stopgap stuff unless Volpe is ready. But are there any prospects that you're near and dear holding on to, or is it free reign for guys like Luis Castillo?
Yeah, I mean, look, you can talk yourself into prospects all day, right? There's a lot of guys I think that have a lot of potential. Luis Medina is a guy who keeps getting mentioned in a potential Castillo trade. He had an electric outing today in Somerset. Obviously Volpe is one of the main reasons the Yankees arguably didn't go after a shortstop this winter. So I'd be pretty shocked to see them trade Peraza and Volpe. Those are both immensely talented guys. Dominguez, Austin Wells, Ken Waldichuk. You can talk yourself in circles for days. Do I want to deplete the farm system and trade every name I just listed? No, but I do think you have to be okay with letting a couple go, namely Peraza, who's a guy that could come up and, start today for the Yankees at shortstop to go get a Luis Castillo. It has to hurt a little bit. So I wouldn't say there's anyone in particular that I would say is untouchable. The only thing I'll say is I would be pretty shocked if at the end of this deadline that both Volpe and Peraza were gone. That would surprise me.
Unless it's for a Juan Soto.
Yeah, and listen, and that's the reality of probably what it would be. And I that's the reason I don't think it's happening. I don't think that Cashman is going to trade his top 5 prospects. We've never seen him do anything like that. And I also don't think they're going to eat Patrick Corbin's money. That's not really something that Hal does either. So that's why I think Castillo is more realistic. You can kind of compare it to the Sonny Gray trade a couple years ago. Obviously it didn't pan out. But I think in terms of, what the pitcher they were acquiring was like, what the cost would be prospect wise. I think there's at least a similar comp for a Castillo trade, whereas, not that there's really a comp for Juan Soto getting traded, but the Yankees have never done anything even similar.
Exactly. And yeah, I just wanted to pull up, we're first place of the American League East, first place in all of baseball, by a closer margin than that. But in the past couple of years, we're looking at the trade deadline, 2017. They were 57-49, second in the AL East. They added Sonny Gray, Jaime Garcia, Todd Frazier, David Robertson, Tommy Canley, and Garrett Cooper. 2018, they were second in the American League East again. Zach Britton, Jay Happ, Luke Voigt, and Lance Lynn. And then, of course, last year they were third in the AL East, not even second, not in the position they are today, but third. And they added Gallo, Andrew Heaney, Clay Holmes, Anthony Rizzo, Joely Rodriguez, Wandy Peralta, Rougned Odor a little bit earlier on before the deadline. What do you think the Yankees walk away with in the position they are, and just looking at recent trends of we're in it to win it?
Yeah, so I think that a kind of a common misconception, and I'm far from Cashman's biggest fan. I think that, he has a little too much job security, all that stuff. At the same time, it's not like he never does anything at the trade deadline, right? Like 2017, 2018, none of those moves were particularly sexy. You could argue the Sonny Gray trade was a big deal at the time. But he made a lot of moves. He improved those teams. He got pieces. They didn't all work out, but he got established guys. I think 2019 is the one that people are mad at him for. He really did nothing of significance to, a really good Yankee team. He added Edwin Encarnacion earlier in the season, but nothing at the deadline. And then last year, to a borderline wildcard team, he goes out and makes 2 big trades for Rizzo and Gallo. So he is active, and I hope that, he's as aggressive as people are anticipating he'll be. I'd personally be surprised if they don't come away with one of Castillo or Montes. I think it makes too much sense. With Severino being hurt, the starting pitching has regressed to the mean. These are guys that he's been in on in the past. We know Cashman kind of has his guys that he goes after. Castillo and Montes are 2 of them. We have the farm system to do it. I think that, again, I sometimes Cashman likes to zig, when people think he's going to zag and not do the obvious thing. I think other times, like right now, I think that you got to kind of just connect the dots. So I think he ends up with one of those 2 pitchers and then maybe a couple other minor moves.
And there it is. So that's our trade deadline preview. Any closing notes, any predictions for any of, if it's not the Yankees picking up somebody, another team grabbing, whether it's the Dodgers, Cardinals, Astros, Mets, who are some of the big movers this rest of the, this next week?
So I think that, let's say the Yankees get Castillo. I think that Montas goes to either the Mariners or the Cardinals. I guess I'd probably say the Cardinals, because I think Soto goes to the Dodgers. I think that at the end of the day, the Padres and Cardinals both get a little bit of cold feet. They're not sure if they want to do that to let him walk in a couple of years, because I don't really see either of them paying him. The Cardinals might dodge, but the Padres probably not. So I think he's a Dodger. It just seems like their kind of move. It just seems like whenever these situations arise where the superstar becomes available, here come the Dodgers with their, endless prospect list and their limitless payroll. So I think he's a Dodger.
Yeah. Before you continue that point, it's like, how do the Dodgers have this untapped potential of a farm trading for Manny Machado, Max Scherzer, Trey Turner, and then possibly Juan Soto, and still being in the position they are? That's
yeah,
crazy.
and Mookie Betts in that time, and they still signed Freddie Freeman, right? It's incredible. I think that's the model that that the Yankees are trying to move towards, and they have done a better job at building up their farm system. But it's a two-way street, right? You need to have a deep farm system, and know which guys are going to be your Aaron Judges, and you're going to bring them up, and which guys are you going to sell off for prospects. So it's a two-way road there. But that's why I'll believe the Dodgers aren't getting this guy when I see it. And then I don't know, Wilson Contreras. I hope he's a Met, just because otherwise I think he'll be an Astro. Same goes for Josh Bell. Hopefully he goes somewhere that's not the Astros, but I think that they'll probably end up with one of those two guys as well.
All right, that sounds good. We'll fact check you by August 2nd. And hopefully the Yankees improve on this. But Stanzo, we appreciate the time. Where can our listeners, find you, find your content, and follow you along this Yankee season?
Yeah, I'm sure everything I said will have been wrong. None of those guys will go to any of those teams. So yeah, feel free to fact check me in a week. Thank you for having me, bro. Appreciate it. It's always fun. Just check me out on Twitter at @Costanzo24, tweeting every Yankee game on there. So we'll see what happens.
All right, hell yeah. Let's go Yanks tonight and the rest of the season. And we need a big win for the trade deadline. That's all I got to say. We just need a big win.
Absolutely. The most important day of the second half of the season is trade deadline day. So let's see what Cashman does.
Right on. All right, take it easy.
All right, bro. Thank you for having me.